Hi, good evening, everybody. We've just seen very nice demonstrations of the conventional and newer techniques of TURBT. And each speaker has beautifully showcased his technique along with the advantages and some shortcomings, if any, of the procedures. And now my job is to summarize and give a short critique about the clinical perspective or the clinical utility of these procedures, whether there is enough evidence today to, um, to incorporate these in our routine clinical practice, whether these are accompanied by tangible clinical benefits, and where exactly is the place of these procedures in our clinical practice, and how are we going to use this at present or in future. We know that TURBT is the critical first step in the management. And apart from complete removal, it gives us adequate information about the staging, about the risk stratification, prognostication, optimal treatment plan. And of course, it has a huge impact on the ultimate outcomes of these patients. Now, we know that although this is a very common procedure, there is a wide variation in the quality and technique of this procedure among the urologists, which has a direct impact on patient outcome. And if you look at the EORTC huge database, you'll see that the most important independent prognosticator of recurrence is the surgeon himself. That means how he performs the procedure is very, very important. Well, nowadays I hear terms like enucleation, vaporization. Well, I don't think these have much of a place unless it's a very small, low-grade tumors, but for a majority of patients, it has to be an excision. Now, monopolar fractionated TUR has been the traditional standard of care. And all of us who have been practicing this are more or less happy with this. It stood the test of time. We know how to use it to get a good muscle. And we also know the problems. However, if you ask me whether this is perfect, by no means it's perfect. It has shortcomings. And what are those shortcomings? We know that it can lead to an inadequate staging, and about the muscle is not present in about 20 to 50% of specimens, depending on the experience of the surgeon. You could get a lot of charring of the resected tissues, which could obscure important histological findings, and the intravesical tumor fragmentation can complicate histopathological evaluation. The second problem is the risk of complications, especially the obturator jerk and bladder perforation in high-risk locations. Now, all of us who have been using a monopolar current know how to avoid the bladder perforations. We can't avoid the obturator jerks, we can minimize them. We leave the bladder half distended, we use short spurts of cutting current at the base, and we've been able to manage. But yes, it is a problem, and occasionally it can lead to a bladder perforation. And in those unfortunate patients, you cannot give post-op chemo installation. So it has the potential to affect outcomes. And therefore, to overcome these problems, these shortcomings, and for improving the safety efficacy, we have two strategies. One is optimizing, one is the arm block resection, and the secondly, use of new energy sources like bipolar. Now, these have been tested in
Haji,
studies, basically for perioperative outcomes and
नहीं
histological
तो
parameters, which in my opinion are surrogate
मैंने
endpoints.
किसी को नहीं करा
But the recurrence-free and progression-free survival has not been consistently reported. And for any cancer, the oncological outcomes must not be compromised. That's the bottom line. So let's talk about the arm block research. Yes, it is ideal to give a precise histology. To get precise histology, it uses a high-quality resected specimens with detrusor muscle in 96 to 100% of patients, a high level of evidence for that, without any increase in the perioperative morbidity. But the impact on recurrence and progression has still not been documented. Secondly, what are the shortcomings of an arm block procedure? Well, it is possible in those small papillary exotic narrow-based tumors, but where the risk of muscle invasion is very small. But when we come to broad-based, large tumors, which are more likely to be muscle invasive, and where arm block excision would be important, it is difficult to practically accomplish. Also, removal of these large tumors within the bladder needs morcellation. So what is the great advantage of en bloc excision if you're going to morcellate and remove the specimen? So in my opinion, if I have to borrow the words of William Whitmore, is en bloc excision necessary when it is possible? And more importantly, is it possible when it is necessary? Let's look at the evidence. There's a 2020 meta-analysis published of fractionated versus en bloc resection using different energy sources. There are 4 randomized clinical trials. It showed what? Lesser catheterization time, shorter hospital stay, lesser operative time. But most importantly, there was no significant difference in muscle in the specimen, residual tumor at the base, and in the recurrence rate at any point of time. And this was a consistent observation in all the 4 RCTs. So therefore, en bloc resection, is it really a trend? Is it really a step change? Or is it just a hype? I think the jury is still out. Energy sources. I'm sure all of us will agree that better than monopolar in some parameters, as all the speakers have very beautifully shown that it does reduce the risk of bladder perforation secondary to obturative jerks. It's a much more precise surgery because there's hardly any blood loss, beautifully demonstrated again by the speakers. It's minimal tissue damage and gives a better specimen for the pathologist. More than 95% of those will have muscle in that. It allows, it can be used in patients who are on antiplatelet agents because the bleeding risk is very small. It's especially useful in patients who have perimeatal tumors, lateral wall tumors, but there is a learning curve there and there is a cost involved there. What is even more important, that there are absolutely no large prospective comparative studies for oncological outcomes as far as laser resections are done. And there are randomized trials of bipolar versus monopolar, but again, the oncological outcomes are not superior. Now, if we are doing an en bloc resection, if we are using new energy sources, why do you use them? Because you want better outcomes. But the oncological outcomes are not superior. They're at the most equal. And most of the times, most of the trials are grossly underpowered to look at survivals. Secondly, data from clinical trials are very contradictory. If you look at the largest European trials or the Indian experience from CMC Vellore, large randomized trials showed no difference whether you use a monopolar or a bipolar cautery. In fact, even the risk of perforations and obturator jerks was no different in the Vellore study. It's only the Chinese study which have predominantly shown that bipolar or lasers have an advantage over monopolar cautery. Now, if at all you are going to use these alternative sources of energy, which one is the best? Would you use bipolar, holmium, thulium? Which one? Well, there is again no head-to-head comparison, but all give equally good perioperative and histopathological results. Oncological results we still don't know too much about, and each has its own distinct advantages and disadvantages, but by and large, you can choose either. What about en bloc cold cut section? Dr. Zishan presented this very novel, innovative technique. Friendly. But it's very early days now. We need much more data and good multi-center trials against the standard TUR before we can even think of calling this one of the standard options. So today, if I have to conclude, en bloc resection and bipolar or laser technologies have potential for improving outcomes. Present evidence suggests some benefit in a very select population of patients, those with small tumors and a very, very experienced surgeon. Of course, you can do this. The questions about which type of tumors, optimal tumor type and technique still needs to be addressed. There's no evidence to suggest oncological equivalence, but the data is underpowered. No large prospective comparative studies for laser, and we just need to wait longer for large RCTs with long-term follow-up before making. So what do we do to know that quality TUR is more likely to be when it's performed by an experienced urologist, irrespective of technique. So technology doesn't override or replace experience at all. Urologists should practice the technique that gives best result in their hands. I'm not trying to downplay the role which is played by the energy sources, but we still need to wait. These are exciting times. I'm very sure that in times to come, we will have more data and probably it will be superior to the monopolar this thing. But at the present time, I think one should choose the technique that gives the best results in our hands. I have deliberately not said anything about the imaging because his talk was so good. It was absolutely crystal clear. But if I have to just say it in one sentence, the standard of care for these patients, for patients who present with hematuria due to bladder cancer, is a contrast CT, urography. Ultrasound by itself is adequate for small tumors which are away for small single tumors away from ureteric orifice. MRI can differentiate between the muscle invasive and non-muscle invasive tumors, but we need to have more data from clinical trials. But this wire-rod system seems to be working quite well. And of course, in future, we are looking at image-guided surgery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hemant, for a very tempered view of all the technology at hand.